In the early 1900s, cars were still new. Many people did not own a car. Most families used horses and wagons to travel. Roads were not very good. Highways did not exist yet. Cars were expensive machines. Only rich people could buy them. Many car companies were starting during this time. Some companies became successful. Many others failed. One of the strongest companies was Ford Motor Company. Ford made the Model T. The Model T was simple, strong, and cheap. Because of this, many Americans could finally afford a car. Another big company was General Motors. General Motors owned several smaller car brands. It wanted to compete with Ford in every price level. It was during this time that Chevrolet was born. Chevrolet was created by two very different men, Louis Chevrolet, William C. Durant. They had different personalities and different goals. Louis Chevrolet was born in Switzerland in 1878. When he was young, he loved machines. He worked as a mechanic. Later, he moved to France and then to Canada. After that, he moved to the United States. In America, he became a famous race car driver. He was brave and loved speed. People respected him because he could drive very fast. At that time, race drivers were like heroes. If a driver won races, people trusted his name. Louis believed cars should be powerful and exciting. He cared about engines and performance. William Durant was born in 1861 in the United States. He was very good at business. Before cars, he made money in the carriage industry. Later, he helped create General Motors in 1908. He bought several car companies and made them part of GM. But Durant took big financial risks. Because of money problems, he lost control of General Motors in 1910. This was a big loss for him. Durant wanted to return to the car industry. He wanted power again. He needed a new company to make this happen. That company became Chevrolet. On November 3, 1911, Chevrolet was officially founded in Detroit, Michigan. Detroit was becoming the center of the American car industry. Many factories were built there. The company was named after Louis Chevrolet. His racing fame helped bring attention to the new brand. However, William Durant was the main business leader. He made most of the financial decisions. The goal of the company was clear: build strong cars, compete with Ford, grow quickly. At first, the company focused on quality and performance. In 1912, Chevrolet introduced its first car, the Classic 6. The Classic 6 had a 6-cylinder engine, good power, solid construction, a high price. It was a large and comfortable car. It was better in some ways than the Ford Model T, but there was a problem. It was expensive. It cost much more than the Model T. Ford focused on low prices. Chevrolet focused on quality and power. Because of this, Chevrolet did not sell as many cars at first. Durant saw that this strategy would not work long-term. During the early years, Chevrolet introduced its famous bow tie logo. There are different stories about how the logo was created. One story says that Durant saw a wallpaper pattern in a hotel room and liked the shape. Another story says he saw the design in a newspaper advertisement. No one knows the exact truth. But the bow tie logo became one of the most famous car logos in history. Even today, when people see the gold bow tie, they know it is Chevrolet. After the first cars were made, tension grew between Louis Chevrolet and William Durant. Louis wanted to continue building powerful and expensive cars. Durant wanted to build affordable cars for more people. Durant understood something very important. To beat Ford, Chevrolet needed to sell cheaper cars. Louis did not agree with this idea. He cared more about racing and performance. In 1915, Louis Chevrolet left the company. He sold his shares to Durant. Later, this became one of the biggest regrets of his life. When Chevrolet became extremely successful, he no longer owned part of it. After Louis left, Durant changed the company's direction. Chevrolet began building smaller and more affordable cars. This helped sales grow quickly. Durant's real plan was bigger than just selling cars. He wanted to use Chevrolet's success to regain control of General Motors, and he succeeded. By 1916, Chevrolet was strong enough financially. Durant used Chevrolet stock to gain control of General Motors again. In 1916, Chevrolet officially became part of General Motors. This was a very important moment. Chevrolet became GM's main brand for affordable cars. This partnership gave Chevrolet more factories, more money, better distribution, national support. It also made General Motors stronger against Ford. After joining General Motors, Chevrolet grew quickly. Sales increased every year. Chevrolet improved its manufacturing systems. It began building cars in larger numbers. More Americans could now afford a Chevrolet. Dealerships opened across the country. The company became a serious competitor to Ford. In 1917, the United States entered World War I. Many car factories changed production to support the military. Chevrolet helped produce vehicles and parts for the war. This helped the company improve its production skills. Factories learned to build things faster and more efficiently. By the year 1920, Chevrolet was one of the top car brands in America. It was fully part of General Motors. It was competing directly with Ford. It had strong sales growth. It had built a national reputation. In less than 10 years, Chevrolet went from a new company to one of the biggest names in the car industry. After the war ended in 1918, Chevrolet was stronger. This first period was important because Chevrolet was founded. It survived early struggles. The founders had conflicts. The company changed direction. It joined General Motors. It became a national brand. Without these early decisions, Chevrolet might have failed like many other car companies of that time. Instead, it survived and grew. And this was only the beginning. The years from 1921 to 1935 were very important for Chevrolet. During this time, the company became one of the biggest car brands in the United States. But these years were not easy. At first, the 1920s were a time of economic growth. Many Americans had jobs. Many families wanted to buy cars. Then, in 1929, everything changed. The Great Depression began. Millions of people lost their jobs. Many businesses failed. Chevrolet had to survive both good times and very bad times. By 1935, Chevrolet was stronger than ever. After World War I ended in 1918, the American economy grew quickly. Factories increased production. More people moved to cities. Roads improved. Cars were no longer just for rich people. Chevrolet wanted to compete directly with Ford Motor Company. Ford was still very strong because of the Model T. The Model T was cheap and simple, but by the early 1920s, some people wanted more modern cars. Chevrolet saw an opportunity. Instead of only competing on price, Chevrolet began offering better styling, more comfort, more colors, strong engines. This strategy helped Chevrolet attract new buyers. One of Chevrolet's important early models was the 490. It was named after its price, $490. The 490 was designed to compete directly with Ford's Model T. It was affordable, reliable, easy to repair. This model helped Chevrolet increase sales across the country. Dealerships expanded into small towns and rural areas. Farmers and working families began buying Chevrolets. In the mid-1920s, Chevrolet's sales grew very fast. By 1927, something historic happened. Chevrolet sold more cars than Ford. This was a huge achievement. For many years, Ford had been number one. Now Chevrolet had taken the lead. One reason for this success was that Ford was slow to change the Model T. It looked old compared to newer cars. Chevrolet offered electric starters, modern designs, closed body cars, better protection from weather. Customers liked these improvements. Because Chevrolet was part of General Motors, it had strong financial support. General Motors used a smart business strategy. Instead of selling only one type of car, GM owned many brands at different price levels. For example, Chevrolet was affordable. Pontiac cost a little more. Oldsmobile was more expensive. Cadillac was luxury. This strategy allowed customers to move up to more expensive cars over time. Chevrolet became the foundation of GM's success. During the 1920s, Chevrolet improved its cars in many ways. Chevrolet continued using six-cylinder engines in many models. Six-cylinder engines were smoother than four-cylinder engines. This gave Chevrolet an advantage. Early cars were often open, like horse carriages, but in the 1920s, closed steel bodies became popular. Closed cars protected drivers from rain, wind, and cold weather. Chevrolet offered these options at reasonable prices. Factories became more efficient. Although Ford had invented the moving assembly line, Chevrolet and GM improved their own systems. This allowed Chevrolet to build more cars quickly. The 1920s are sometimes called the Roaring Twenties. People had money. They wanted modern lifestyles. Cars became a symbol of freedom. Young people used cars for travel and fun. Chevrolet advertised its cars as modern, stylish, and reliable. Advertising became more important during this time. Chevrolet used newspapers, magazines, and billboards to promote its brand. The bow tie logo became more recognized across America. In October 1929, the stock market crashed. This event marked the beginning of the Great Depression. Banks failed. Businesses closed. Millions of people lost their jobs. Car sales dropped sharply. For many families, buying a car was no longer possible. This was a dangerous time for car companies. Some car brands disappeared completely. Chevrolet survived because of several reasons. Strong support from General Motors. Being part of General Motors gave Chevrolet financial stability. GM had multiple brands, which helped spread risk. Affordable models. Chevrolet continued offering affordable cars. Even during hard times, some families could still buy lower-priced vehicles. Smart Management GM had professional managers who focused on careful planning. They reduced costs and improved efficiency. New styling. During the early 1930s, car styling became more modern. Cars had smoother shapes and stronger bodies. Chevrolet introduced models that looked fresh and attractive, even during economic hardship. In the early 1930s, cars began changing in appearance. They became lower to the ground, more rounded, more stylish. Chevrolet followed these trends. In 1934, Chevrolet introduced a new design with a knee-action suspension system. This improved ride comfort. Comfort became an important selling point. Even during the Depression, people wanted cars that felt modern. Ford was still strong. Other companies like Chrysler were also competing, but Chevrolet worked hard to stay ahead. The company focused on value for money. Modern features, nationwide dealerships. Dealership networks were very important. Even small towns had Chevrolet dealers. This made repairs and service easier for customers. Even during the Depression, Chevrolet remained one of the largest employers in the auto industry. Factories reduced production, but they did not close completely. When the economy slowly improved in the mid-1930s, Chevrolet was ready to increase production again. By 1935, Chevrolet had survived the Great Depression, maintained strong sales, improved car design, strengthened its dealer network. The company proved it could survive economic crisis. This made customers trust the brand even more. This period was important because Chevrolet became America's top-selling car brand. It defeated Ford in sales during the 1920s. It survived the worst economic crisis in American history. It improved technology and design. It became a stable part of General Motors' strategy. By 1935, Chevrolet was no longer a young company trying to survive. It was now one of the strongest names in the American car industry. During the 1920s, Chevrolet did not depend on just one car. The company introduced improved models almost every year. This was different from Ford Motor Company, which kept the Model T almost the same for many years. Chevrolet believed in yearly improvements. This made customers excited. Some improvements included better headlights, stronger brakes, more comfortable seats, improved cooling systems. Customers began to see Chevrolet as modern and progressive. By 1927, Ford finally stopped making the Model T. It had been produced for nearly 20 years. This was a major moment in American car history. Ford introduced the Model A to replace it, but during the changeover period, Ford factories stopped production for several months. Chevrolet used this opportunity wisely. While Ford was reorganizing, Chevrolet increased production and sales. In 1927, Chevrolet became the #1 car brand in America. This was a huge victory. In the 1920s and 1930s, advertising became very important. Chevrolet invested heavily in marketing. Advertisements showed happy families, modern cities, clean country roads, stylish drivers. The message was simple: a Chevrolet gives you freedom and pride. The famous bow tie logo became stronger in public memory. Dealers also played a big role. Local dealerships built personal relationships with customers. People trusted their local Chevrolet dealer. During this period, Chevrolet also began expanding its truck business. Trucks were important for farmers, small businesses, delivery companies. Chevrolet trucks were known for being strong and dependable. By the early 1930s, Chevrolet trucks were becoming very popular in rural America. This helped the company earn money, even when passenger car sales slowed down. The truck business would later become one of Chevrolet's greatest strengths. The early 1930s brought more technical improvements. One important development was the Stove-Bolt 6 engine. This six-cylinder engine became famous for reliability. It provided smooth performance, strong pulling power, long engine life. Many drivers trusted this engine for years. Chevrolet continued focusing on durability. During hard economic times, people wanted cars that would last many years. By 1933 and 1934, car styling became more modern. Cars had rounded fenders, lower bodies, wider stance. In 1934, Chevrolet introduced improved independent front suspension, sometimes called knee action. This made rides smoother on rough roads. Comfort became a major selling point. Even during the Depression, people appreciated small luxuries. The Great Depression created tension between workers and companies. Many workers faced lower wages and job insecurity. During the early 1930s, labor unions became stronger in the United States. Workers wanted better pay, safer working conditions, job protection. As part of General Motors, Chevrolet factories were affected by labor movements. Although major strikes would happen later in the 1930s, this period began building worker organization. The relationship between factory workers and management was changing. During the worst years of the Depression, 1930 to 1933, car sales dropped sharply across the country. Chevrolet had to reduce production, cut costs, avoid waste. But it did not stop innovation completely. General Motors' leadership believed that long-term strength required continued development. This balanced strategy helped Chevrolet survive while some smaller car companies disappeared. Many car brands from the 1920s no longer existed by 1935. Chevrolet remained strong. By 1934 and 1935, the American economy slowly began to improve. President Franklin D. Roosevelt introduced programs to help workers and businesses. As jobs slowly returned, car sales began to increase again. Chevrolet was ready. Because the company had maintained its dealer network and factory system, it could quickly increase production. In 1935, Chevrolet introduced new models with improved styling and stronger bodies. Sales improved significantly. By 1935, Chevrolet had achieved several important things. It had defeated Ford in total sales during the 1920s. It had survived the worst economic crisis in American history. It had built a strong truck division. It had improved engineering quality. It had expanded its dealer network across the country. Customers trusted Chevrolet. It was seen as reliable, affordable, modern American. This reputation would carry into the next decade. The years 1921 to 1935 shaped Chevrolet's identity. During good times, the company learned how to grow quickly. During bad times, it learned how to survive. It became more professional in management. It strengthened its partnership with General Motors. It built long-term customer loyalty. Without surviving the Great Depression, Chevrolet might not have lasted into the future, but instead, it came out stronger. The years from 1936 to 1945 were very serious years for the United States and for Chevrolet. At the start of this period, America was still recovering from the Great Depression. Many people were slowly getting back to work. Car sales were improving again. But in 1941, everything changed. The United States entered World War II. Car factories stopped making normal cars. They began making military vehicles and equipment instead. Chevrolet had to change very quickly. By 1945, the company was no longer just a car company. It had become part of America's war effort. By 1936, Chevrolet was one of the biggest car brands in America. It was part of General Motors, which was the largest car company in the world at that time. Chevrolet was GM's main brand for affordable cars. In 1936, Chevrolet introduced new styling. Cars were becoming more modern and more beautiful. They had rounded shapes, built-in trunks, better interiors, improved engines. Sales were strong again. People trusted Chevrolet because it had survived the Great Depression. In the late 1930s, car design changed quickly. Cars became longer, lower, wider. Chevrolet improved both looks and comfort. Chevrolet used strong steel bodies. This made cars' suspension systems improved. Cars felt smoother on rough roads, safer and stronger. Chevrolet continued using its famous six-cylinder engine. This engine was known for durability, smooth driving, easy maintenance. Many customers believed Chevrolet engines lasted longer than competitors. During this time, Chevrolet competed mainly with Ford Motor Company, Chrysler. The competition was strong. Ford introduced new V8 engines. Chrysler focused on engineering innovation. Chevrolet focused on balance, good price, good design, good reliability. This balanced approach kept Chevrolet near the top in sales. The late 1930s also brought major labor changes. Workers across America were organizing into labor unions. At General Motors factories, including Chevrolet plants, workers joined the United Auto Workers, UAW. In 1936 and 1937, there were major strikes in the auto industry. The most famous was the Flint sit-down strike against General Motors. Workers demanded better pay, safer working conditions, recognition of their union. After weeks of tension, General Motors recognized the union. This changed the relationship between workers and management forever. From this point forward, unions became an important part of the American auto industry. In 1939 and 1940, Chevrolet introduced new models with more modern styling. The cars looked more streamlined. Fenders were more integrated into the body. In 1941, Chevrolet introduced a redesigned line of vehicles. These cars had larger bodies, improved interiors, better safety glass. Sales were strong. No one knew that normal car production was about to stop. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. The United States entered World War II the next day. Soon, the American government ordered car companies to stop making civilian cars. Factories had to focus on war production. This was a huge change for Chevrolet. In early 1942, Chevrolet stopped producing regular cars for customers. This was difficult. Dealers had no new cars to sell. Factories had to change equipment and training, but the country needed support for the war. Chevrolet answered that call. During World War II, Chevrolet produced military trucks, aircraft engines, shells and ammunition, vehicle parts for the Army. Chevrolet trucks became very important during the war. Military forces needed strong and reliable trucks to move soldiers' equipment supplies. Chevrolet built hundreds of thousands of military trucks. These trucks were used in Europe, Africa, the Pacific. The company became part of the arsenal of democracy. This term described America's ability to produce huge amounts of war equipment. Chevrolet factories changed completely during the war. Workers who once built family cars now built military equipment. Many men went to fight in the war. Women entered factories in large numbers for the first time. Rosie the Riveter became a symbol of women working in defense factories. Chevrolet plants were filled with new workers learning new skills. Production numbers were massive. The company proved it could build more than just cars. The war years were not easy. Factories worked long hours. Materials like steel and rubber were controlled by the government. Workers felt stressed because many had family members fighting overseas. Dealerships struggled because there were no new cars to sell. However, people understood that the war effort was more important than business profits. In 1945, World War II ended. Germany surrendered in May 1945. Japan surrendered in September 1945. The war was over. America began preparing for peacetime again. Chevrolet now faced a new challenge: how to return to normal car production. Factories had to change again. Equipment used for military production needed to be replaced or modified. Workers returned from the war. America was ready to move forward. This period was important because Chevrolet strengthened its position before the war. It faced major labor changes. It stopped civilian car production. It became a key part of America's war effort. It proved it could adapt during extreme crisis. By 1945, Chevrolet was stronger, more experienced, and more respected. The company had shown that it could support the country during its most difficult time. When the United States entered World War II in 1941, everything changed very fast. Chevrolet stopped making normal cars in early 1942. The company had to follow orders from the US government. The government told car companies, "Stop making civilian cars. Use factories for military production. Focus only on helping the war effort." Chevrolet agreed immediately. The company understood that winning the war was more important than selling cars. One of the most important products Chevrolet made during the war was military trucks. The Army needed trucks to move soldiers, carry weapons, deliver food and fuel, pull artillery. Chevrolet trucks were known for being strong and dependable. Because of this, the military trusted them. Chevrolet built hundreds of thousands of trucks between 1942 and 1945. These trucks were used in Europe, North Africa, the Pacific Islands. Many soldiers depended on Chevrolet trucks every day. Without trucks, armies cannot move. This made Chevrolet very important to the war effort. Chevrolet did not only make trucks. The company also helped build aircraft engines and airplane parts. Airplanes were very important during World War II. They were used for fighting in the air, dropping supplies, transporting soldiers, bombing enemy targets. Chevrolet factories made engine parts with very high precision. Building airplane engines required special skills. Workers had to learn quickly. The company proved that it could build more than just cars. During the war, Chevrolet also produced shells, bomb parts, other military equipment. Factories worked day and night. Production numbers were very high. This is why the United States was called the arsenal of democracy. American factories produced huge amounts of war materials. Chevrolet was part of that success. When the war began, many men left their factory jobs to join the military. This created a worker shortage. Women began working in car factories in large numbers. Before the war, most factory workers were men. Now, women learned to operate machines, assemble engines, inspect parts, weld metal. The symbol of this change was Rosie the Riveter. Chevrolet factories had many women workers for the first time in company history. This changed American society. After the war, women had more job opportunities than before. War production was not easy. Factories operated almost 24 hours a day. Workers had long shifts. There was pressure to produce more and more equipment. Mistakes could cost lives. Workers felt proud to help the country, but but they were also tired and worried. Many had family members fighting overseas. The war affected everyone. While factories were busy with military work, Chevrolet dealerships had a problem. There were no new civilian cars to sell. Dealers had to survive by repairing old cars, selling used cars, providing service and maintenance. Because new cars were not available, people kept their old cars longer. Dealerships had to be patient. They knew that when the war ended, people would want new cars again. Even during the war, leaders at General Motors and Chevrolet were planning for the future. They knew the war would end one day. They started designing new cars quietly. Engineers worked on new body styles, improved engines, better safety features. But they could not build these cars yet. They had to wait until the government allowed civilian production again. In May 1945, Germany surrendered. In August 1945, Japan surrendered after atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. World War II was finally over. People celebrated across the United States. Soldiers returned home. Factories prepared to change again. Chevrolet now had a new mission: return to making cars for families. Changing from war production back to car production was not simple. Factories had to remove military equipment, reinstall car assembly tools, retrain workers, restart supply chains. This process took time. In late 1945, Chevrolet slowly began producing civilian cars again. But these early post-war cars looked very similar to pre-war models. There had not been time to fully redesign them. Still, customers were excited. After years without new cars, people were ready to buy. After the war, the American economy grew quickly. Many soldiers returned home and started families. This period later became known as the baby boom. Families needed cars, houses, appliances. There was huge demand for automobiles. Chevrolet was ready. Because the company had stayed strong during the war, it could increase production quickly. Dealerships were busy again. The war taught Chevrolet many important lessons. It learned how to produce in very large numbers. It improved precision manufacturing. It trained a new workforce, including many women. It learned how to adapt quickly during crisis. These lessons would help Chevrolet grow in the 1950s. By the end of 1945, Chevrolet was experienced, financially stable, technically advanced, trusted by Americans. The company had supported the country during its most difficult years. Now, a new era was beginning. The late 1940s and 1950s would become one of the greatest growth periods in Chevrolet history. This period shaped Chevrolet in many ways. Before the war, the company improved its cars and strengthened its sales. During the war, it proved it could serve the nation. After the war, it was ready for a huge wave of new customers. Chevrolet entered the post-war world stronger than ever. The next decade would bring new design ideas, more powerful engines, famous models, a golden age of American cars, and Chevrolet would be at the center of it. After World War II ended in 1945, the United States entered a time of strong economic growth. Soldiers returned home. Many started families. This period became known as the baby boom. People wanted new homes, new appliances, new cars. During the war, car production had stopped. Families had waited for years to buy new vehicles. Now they were ready. Chevrolet was in a very good position. The company had strong factories, skilled workers, and support from General Motors. The late 1940s and 1950s would become one of the most important and exciting periods in Chevrolet history. When the war ended, Chevrolet had to restart car production. At first, the cars looked very similar to the 1942 models. There had not been enough time to create brand new designs. Still, customers were happy. Dealerships had long waiting lists. Some people waited months for delivery. Factories worked hard to increase production. During these first post-war years, the focus was reliability, practical design, meeting high demand. There was more demand than supply. During the late 1940s, American society changed quickly. Highways expanded, suburbs began growing outside major cities. Families moved away from crowded urban centers. Cars became more important than ever. A car was no longer just transportation. It became a symbol of freedom, a symbol of success, a symbol of modern life. Chevrolet understood this cultural change. The company knew cars had to be stylish, not just practical. In 1949, Chevrolet introduced a completely new design. This was very important. The 1949 models had lower bodies, integrated fenders, modern styling, stronger frames. They looked very different from pre-war cars. Customers loved the fresh look. Sales were strong. This redesign marked the true beginning of Chevrolet's post-war era. Chevrolet faced strong competition from Ford Motor Company Chrysler. Ford also introduced new post-war designs. The competition pushed all companies to improve quickly. Chevrolet focused on offering good value, dependable engines, attractive design. The company remained one of the top-selling brands in America. In the early 1950s, Chevrolet continued refining its cars. Improvements included better automatic transmissions, improved heating systems, stronger brakes, better interior materials. Families wanted comfort and safety. Chevrolet also expanded its truck business. Trucks became popular with farmers' construction companies, small businesses. Chevrolet trucks were known for toughness. In 1953, Chevrolet introduced something completely different. It introduced the Chevrolet Corvette. This was Chevrolet's first true sports car. The Corvette was small, stylish, fast two-seater. It had a fiberglass body, which was unusual at that time. The Corvette was not designed for families. It was designed for excitement. It showed that Chevrolet could build more than affordable cars. It could build performance machines too. The first Corvette models had some problems. They used a 6-cylinder engine, which some drivers thought was not powerful enough. Sales were not very high in the first years. There was even discussion inside General Motors about stopping Corvette production. But Chevrolet decided to improve it instead of canceling it. This decision would become very important later. In 1955, Chevrolet introduced one of the most important engines in its history. This was the small block V8 engine. The V8 engine gave cars more power, better acceleration, strong performance. The new V8 made the Corvette much more exciting. It also improved performance in regular Chevrolet models. The 1955 Chevrolet lineup became very popular. This engine would become legendary. It would be used and improved for decades. The years 1955, 1956, and 1957 are often called the Tri-5 years. These cars became some of the most famous Chevrolets ever built. They had bright chrome details, bold styling, powerful V8 options, modern interiors. The 1957 Chevrolet, especially the Bel Air model, became an American icon. It symbolized 1950s optimism, economic success, youth culture. Many collectors still love these cars today. In the 1950s, cars became part of youth culture. Teenagers and young adults used cars for dating, road trips, drive-in movies, social life. Music, like early rock and roll, became popular. Cars and music were connected. Chevrolet benefited from this cultural change. The brand became linked to freedom-style power advertising focused on happy families and proud drivers. As cars became faster and more powerful, safety became more important. Chevrolet added stronger frames, improved brakes, better steering systems. Automatic transmissions became more common. Power steering and power brakes became available options. Cars were becoming easier to drive. During the 1950s, Chevrolet production numbers increased greatly. Factories were modern and efficient. The American economy was strong. Chevrolet became one of the best-selling car brands in the United States. The company's truck division also grew. Pickup trucks became popular not only for work, but also for personal use. By the late 1950s, car design became even more dramatic. Cars had large tail fins, wide bodies, heavy chrome decoration. The 1959 Chevrolet models were bold and very noticeable. They represented the peak of 1950s design style. Some people loved the large designs. Others thought they were too extreme, but they clearly showed confidence. By the end of the 1950s, Chevrolet was one of the top-selling car brands in America, a leader in performance with the Corvette strong in trucks, known for style and power. The company had successfully moved from post-war recovery to a golden age of growth. It had become part of American identity. This period was important because Chevrolet returned from war production successfully. It redesigned its cars for a modern America. It introduced the Corvette. It created the powerful small-block V8 engine. It built some of the most iconic cars in history. The 1950s made Chevrolet a symbol of American strength and optimism. But the 1960s would bring new challenges and new opportunities. After the Chevrolet Corvette was introduced in 1953, Chevrolet knew it needed improvements. The first Corvette had a 6-cylinder engine. Some drivers felt it was not powerful enough for a sports car. In 1955, everything changed when Chevrolet added the new V8 engine. The small block V8 gave the Corvette much more power, faster acceleration, a stronger sports identity. Sales began to improve. Engineers continued improving the car every year. By the late 1950s, the Corvette was becoming respected in the performance world. During the 1950s, racing became more popular in America. Chevrolet engineers understood that racing success could improve the company's image. Although General Motors officially limited factory racing involvement for safety and public image reasons, engineers still worked on performance improvements. Private racing teams used Corvettes in competitions. The Corvette began building a reputation as a serious sports car. This racing influence would become even stronger in the 1960s. While the Corvette was exciting, most customers still wanted family cars. One of the most famous models was the Chevrolet Bel Air. The Bel Air became especially popular in the Tri-5 years, 1955 to 1957. It offered stylish chrome trim, two-tone paint colors, comfortable interiors, V8 engine options. The 1957 Bel Air became one of the most famous American cars ever built. Even today, many collectors restore and display these cars. The Bel Air showed that Chevrolet could combine beauty and performance at a reasonable price. In the 1950s, automatic transmissions became more common. Driving became easier. Before this time, most cars required manual shifting. Chevrolet offered improved automatic transmissions in many models. This made cars more attractive to families, older drivers, new drivers. Comfort and convenience became selling points. Car interiors changed a lot during this period. Chevrolet added softer seats, better dashboard design, improved heating systems, stylish steering wheels. Cars became more colorful inside and outside. Two-tone paint became very popular. Chrome decorations increased. Design became emotional. People did not just buy a car for transportation. They bought it for pride. During the late 1940s and 1950s, Chevrolet trucks continued to grow in popularity. At first, trucks were mostly used for work, but by the late 1950s, some families began using pickup trucks for personal transportation. Chevrolet improved truck comfort. Seats became better. Cabins became quieter. This change would become very important in later decades, when trucks became lifestyle vehicles. During the 1950s, competition between Chevrolet and Ford Motor Company was very strong. Both companies introduced powerful V8 engines, redesigned cars often advertised heavily. This competition pushed innovation. Chevrolet focused on style, engine power, value for money. Many years during the 1950s, Chevrolet led in total sales. Being number one became a matter of pride. In 1958, Chevrolet introduced a bigger and more dramatic design. Cars had quad headlights, more chrome, larger bodies. This style reflected the optimism of the late 1950s. America felt strong and confident during this time. The space race had begun. Technology was exciting. Cars became larger and more powerful. The 1959 Chevrolet models were some of the most dramatic ever made. They had large horizontal tail fins, wide rear ends, bright chrome trim. These cars clearly showed 1950s design style. Some people loved the bold look. Others thought it was too extreme. But the 1959 models were impossible to ignore. They represented the peak of 1950s American car design. Although the 1950s were mostly strong economically, there were small recessions during the decade. Car companies had to adjust production sometimes. Still, overall demand remained high. Families continued growing. Suburbs expanded. Highways improved. Cars were needed everywhere. Chevrolet benefited from this national growth. During this period, Chevrolet engineers gained great experience. They improved engine performance, suspension systems, transmission reliability, brake systems. The small block V8 engine became one of the company's greatest achievements. It was powerful, compact, and easy to improve. This engine would influence performance cars for decades. By the end of the 1950s, Chevrolet had built a very strong identity. It was known for affordable family cars, strong V8 engines, stylish design, the exciting Corvette. The company had become part of American culture. Songs, movies, and advertisements featured Chevrolet cars. For many Americans, owning a Chevrolet meant success and freedom. As 1959 ended, a new decade was beginning. The 1960s would bring muscle cars, compact cars, new safety concerns, more competition. Chevrolet would face new challenges. But it entered the 1960s with strong confidence. It had strong sales, advanced engines, a respected sports car, a loyal customer base. The golden age of the 1950s had prepared Chevrolet for even greater changes ahead. This period shaped Chevrolet's long-term reputation. It showed that the company could recover from war, lead in design, create performance icons, compete successfully with Ford. The introduction of the Corvette and the small block V8 engine changed Chevrolet forever. The company was no longer only about affordable transportation. It was now about power, style, and identity. The 1950s made Chevrolet an American legend. The 1960s were a time of major change in America. The country experienced strong economic growth, cultural changes, new music and youth culture, the space race, social movements. Cars became even more important in American life. Young people wanted cars that were fast, stylish, affordable. Families still needed safe and practical vehicles. Chevrolet had to serve both groups. During this decade, Chevrolet created some of the most famous cars in history. At the start of the 1960s, smaller cars became popular. Foreign car companies were selling small, fuel-efficient cars in the United States. Chevrolet decided to respond. In 1960, Chevrolet introduced the Chevrolet Corvair. The Corvair was very different from other American cars. It had a rear-mounted engine, air cooling instead of water cooling, compact size. The design was unusual. At first, the Corvair sold well. People liked the smaller size and modern look. Later, the Corvair faced criticism. Some people said the car had handling problems at high speeds. In 1965, a book called Unsafe at Any Speed criticized car safety in America. The book was written by Ralph Nader. It focused heavily on the Corvair. This created public concern. Chevrolet defended the car. Later investigations showed that the Corvair was not more dangerous than similar cars at that time. However, the controversy hurt its reputation. The Corvair was eventually discontinued in 1969. This event changed how car companies handled safety. In 1964, Chevrolet introduced the Chevrolet Chevelle. The Chevelle was a mid-size car. It was larger than a compact car, but smaller than a full-size car. This size became very popular. The Chevelle offered strong engines, comfortable interiors, stylish design. It became one of Chevrolet's best-selling models. In the mid-1960s, a new type of car became popular. These cars were called muscle cars. A muscle car usually had a large V8 engine, a mid-size body, strong acceleration, affordable price. The Chevelle became one of Chevrolet's most famous muscle cars. High-performance versions, like the Chevelle SS Super Sport, became very popular with young drivers. The muscle car era had begun. In 1967, Chevrolet introduced one of its most important cars, the Chevrolet Camaro. The Camaro was created to compete with the Ford Mustang. The Mustang had become very popular after its introduction in 1964. Chevrolet needed a strong competitor. The Camaro was sporty, affordable, customizable, available, with powerful engines. It became an instant success. Customers could choose from many engine options, including strong V8 engines. The Camaro quickly became a symbol of performance and youth culture. During the 1960s, the Chevrolet Corvette improved greatly. In 1963, Chevrolet introduced a new Corvette design called the Stingray. This design was lower, more aerodynamic, more powerful. The 1963 Corvette Stingray became one of the most famous sports cars in history. It offered strong V8 engines and advanced suspension systems. Throughout the decade, Corvette performance continued to increase. By the late 1960s, some Corvette models had extremely powerful engines. The Corvette became known worldwide as a serious American sports car. During the 1960s, racing became very important for Chevrolet's image. Although General Motors had limits on official racing programs, performance engineering continued. Chevrolet engines were used in stock car racing, drag racing, road racing. Success in racing helped build the brand's performance reputation. The company became strongly connected to speed and power. While muscle cars and sports cars gained attention, most customers still bought full-size family cars. Chevrolet continued offering large sedans and station wagons. These cars were used for family travel, vacation trips, daily commuting. Full-size models offered big interiors, smooth rides, strong V8 options. Chevrolet balanced performance with practicality. By the late 1960s, car designs became more aggressive, more muscular. Less decorated with chrome cars looked stronger and more powerful. The Camaro and Chevelle became more aggressive in style. The Corvette became even more aerodynamic. The design language reflected the bold spirit of the 1960s. After the Corvair controversy and growing public awareness, safety regulations increased. The U.S. government introduced new safety rules. Cars began including seat belts, energy-absorbing steering columns, improved braking systems. Chevrolet had to adjust to these new laws. Safety became part of car design. This marked the beginning of a new era of regulation in the auto industry. By 1969, Chevrolet had dominated the muscle car market, strengthened the Camaro brand, improved the Corvette, expanded mid-size and full-size models. The 1960s were exciting, but also challenging. Performance was at its peak, but change was coming. The 1970s would bring oil crises, emission laws, fuel economy concerns. The muscle car era would soon face serious challenges. By the mid and late 1960s, car companies were competing for one main thing. Horsepower means engine power. The more horsepower a car had, the faster it could go. Chevrolet was fully involved in what people now call the horsepower wars. Chevrolet engineers kept building bigger and stronger V8 engines. Customers, especially young drivers, wanted faster acceleration, loud engine sounds, strong street performance. This competition pushed engine power higher every year. The Chevrolet Chevelle SS Super Sport became one of the most famous muscle cars of the decade. The Chevelle SS offered very powerful engine options. By the late 1960s, Some versions had engines over 400 cubic inches in size. These engines gave drivers very quick acceleration, strong torque, impressive street presence. The Chevelle SS 396 became especially popular. The number 396 referred to the engine size. It became a symbol of muscle car power. The Chevrolet Camaro was also developed into high-performance versions. One important version was the Camaro Z28. This model was designed partly for racing competition. It had a high-revving V8 engine, special suspension tuning, sporty stripes, and design. The Camaro Z28 became popular with performance fans. The Camaro was not just a stylish car, it was a serious performance machine. The Chevrolet Corvette continued improving throughout the 1960s. In 1968, Chevrolet introduced a completely redesigned Corvette. This new design was inspired by racing cars. It had a long hood, a short rear deck, curved body lines. Performance reached very high levels. Some late 1960s Corvettes had engines producing very high horsepower. The Corvette became one of the fastest American cars of its time. It was no longer just an American sports car. It was respected internationally. In the late 1960s, some Chevrolet dealers offered special performance packages. These were not always officially advertised by General Motors. Dealers worked with performance engineers to create limited high-power versions of cars. These cars became rare and highly collectible later. This showed how strong the performance culture had become. Customers wanted more than basic transportation. They wanted excitement. The 1960s were strongly connected to youth culture. Young drivers loved muscle cars because they were affordable compared to European sports cars. Powerful, stylish cars became part of personal identity. Movies and television shows began featuring fast American cars. Street racing became more common. Music and cars were connected. The muscle car became a symbol of freedom and rebellion. Chevrolet was at the center of this movement. As cars became faster, accidents became more serious. The U.S. government increased safety regulations. New rules required seatbelts, safer steering columns, improved lighting, better crash protection. Car companies had to follow these rules. Safety became more important in design decisions. Performance was still strong, but regulation was increasing. Near the end of the 1960s, concerns about air pollution grew. Large V8 engines used a lot of fuel and produced high emissions. The government began creating emission standards. These rules would become much stricter in the 1970s. Chevrolet engineers knew that changes were coming. The era of unlimited horsepower would not last forever. Another problem for muscle car buyers was insurance. Insurance companies noticed that high-performance cars were involved in many accidents. They began charging higher insurance rates for muscle cars. This made some buyers think twice. Powerful cars were becoming more expensive to own. By 1969, muscle cars were at their peak. Chevrolet offered high horsepower Chevelle SS models, strong Camaro performance versions, powerful Corvette options. Design was bold. Engines were large. Performance was extreme. But signs of change were clear. New regulations, rising insurance costs, and environmental concerns were growing. The 1970s would bring very different challenges. By 1969, Chevrolet had achieved many things. It created some of the most famous muscle cars in history. It strengthened the Camaro as a Mustang competitor. It improved the Corvette into a world-class sports car. It balanced performance with family car sales. The company was strong, confident, and successful. But the next decade would test that strength. The 1960s shaped Chevrolet's performance image forever. During this decade, the muscle car was born. Horsepower reached record levels. The Camaro became a legend. The Corvette became a true sports icon. Even today, many collectors and car fans consider the 1960s the greatest performance era in Chevrolet history. However, the 1970s would change everything. Oil shortages, strict laws, and economic problems would force Chevrolet to rethink its strategy. The golden age of muscle cars was ending. A new chapter was about to begin. The 1970s were very different from the 1960s. In the 1960s, cars became bigger and more powerful every year. Engines became stronger, horsepower reached very high levels. But in the 1970s, many new problems appeared. These problems included fuel shortages, rising gas prices, strict government rules, pollution concerns, economic trouble. The muscle car era was ending. Chevrolet had to change quickly to survive. At the start of 1970, Chevrolet still offered very powerful cars. The Chevrolet Chevelle SS454 was one of the strongest muscle cars ever built. The Chevrolet Camaro and the Chevrolet Corvette also had powerful engine options. Horsepower numbers were very high, but this would not last. New government rules about emissions began reducing engine power. Engines had to burn fuel more cleanly. As a result, horsepower numbers started to drop. In the early 1970s, the United States government created new environmental laws. The Clean Air Act required car companies to reduce pollution. Chevrolet had to redesign engines. Engines became lower compression, less powerful, more focused on emissions control. Catalytic converters were introduced later in the decade. These devices helped reduce harmful gases from the exhaust. However, they also reduced engine performance. Many drivers noticed that 1970s cars were not as fast as late 1960s models. In 1973, a major event changed the car industry. Several oil-producing countries reduced oil exports to the United States. This caused fuel shortages. Gas stations had long lines. Gas prices increased quickly. Large cars with big engines used a lot of fuel. Suddenly, fuel efficiency became very important. Many Americans wanted smaller cars that used less gasoline. This was a major change. Chevrolet had to adjust its strategy. Because of high fuel prices, Chevrolet focused more on smaller vehicles. Compact and mid-size cars became more important. One important compact car was the Chevrolet Vega, introduced in 1970. The Vega was designed to compete with small foreign cars. It was smaller, lighter, more fuel efficient. At first, the Vega sold well, but later, it faced quality problems, especially with engine durability and rust. This damaged Chevrolet's reputation for reliability. Even full-size Chevrolet cars became smaller in the late 1970s. In 1977, Chevrolet introduced redesigned full-size models that were lighter and more fuel efficient. These cars were shorter, lighter, more efficient. Customers responded positively. Chevrolet showed that large cars could be redesigned for better fuel economy. The Chevrolet Camaro continued during the 1970s, but engine power was lower than before. The design became more focused on appearance than extreme speed. The Chevrolet Corvette also faced power reductions because of emission rules. By the mid-1970s, Corvette horsepower was much lower than in the late 1960s. Still, the Corvette remained an important symbol of American sports cars. Even with less power, it kept strong sales. In addition to emission laws, safety regulations increased. New rules required larger bumpers, stronger crash protection, improved lighting systems. The large safety bumpers introduced in the mid-1970s changed the look of many cars. Some customers thought these bumpers made cars less attractive, but safety became a legal requirement. Chevrolet had to follow the law. The 1970s were not economically stable. There was high inflation. Interest rates increased. Unemployment rose during certain years. These problems affected car sales. Some families delayed buying new vehicles. Chevrolet had to manage costs carefully. During the 1970s, Japanese car companies became stronger in the US market. Brands like Toyota and Honda offered very fuel-efficient cars, high reliability, good quality control. Many American customers began buying these foreign cars. Chevrolet and other American companies faced serious competition. This forced Chevrolet to focus more on quality improvement. While passenger cars faced challenges, Chevrolet trucks remained popular. Pickup trucks were used for work, farming, construction, personal transportation. Even during the oil crisis, trucks remained important in many parts of America. Chevrolet's truck division provided stability during difficult times. Near the end of the decade, another oil crisis occurred in 1979. Fuel prices increased again. Fuel efficiency became even more important. By this time, Chevrolet had already begun shifting towards smaller and more efficient cars. The company was better prepared than in 1973. By the end of the 1970s, Chevrolet had reduced engine sizes, improved fuel efficiency, adjusted to strict emission laws, redesigned full-size cars, continued strong truck production. The company survived a very difficult decade. The 1970s forced Chevrolet to change its priorities. Performance was no longer the main focus. Efficiency, safety, and compliance became more important. This decade changed the entire auto industry. For Chevrolet, it meant the end of the muscle car golden age, the beginning of fuel economy focus, the rise of foreign competition, major changes in engineering strategy. The company had to adapt or risk losing its position. Although the 1970s were challenging, Chevrolet survived. The lessons learned during this decade would shape the company in the 1980s. At first, the Vega was very popular. It was small, modern, and fuel efficient. Many people liked its size and price, but after a few years, problems began to appear. Some of the main problems were engine overheating, oil consumption issues, rust problems on the body, durability concerns. Many customers complained. This hurt Chevrolet's reputation. Before the 1970s, Chevrolet was known for strong and reliable cars. The Vega problems made some customers lose trust. Chevrolet learned an important lesson. Small cars must still be strong and high quality. Because of quality problems in some 1970s models, Chevrolet began working on better quality control. This meant better testing before cars were sold, improved factory inspections, better materials, more careful engineering. Japanese car companies were known for strong quality control. Chevrolet had to improve to compete. During the late 1970s, General Motors began studying foreign manufacturing systems. This would help Chevrolet in the next decade. One of Chevrolet's biggest successes in the 1970s came in 1977. The company redesigned its full-size cars. These cars became shorter, lighter, more fuel efficient, but they still offered large interiors, comfortable seating, smooth rides. Customers liked these redesigned cars. Sales were strong. This showed that downsizing could work if done carefully. Chevrolet proved that big American cars could adapt to new fuel rules. Two important full-size models during the 1970s were the Caprice and the Impala. These cars were popular with families, used by police departments, used as taxis. After downsizing in 1977, they became more efficient while keeping comfort. Police departments especially liked Chevrolet full-size cars because they were strong and durable. These models helped Chevrolet maintain steady sales during difficult economic times. The Chevrolet Camaro continued into the 1970s with a second-generation design introduced in 1970. Its body style became longer and more curved. Although engine power was lower than in the 1960s, the Camaro remained popular. Many buyers liked its sporty look, its strong V8 sound, its affordable price. Even though it was not as powerful as before, it kept the spirit of performance alive. The Corvette also struggled with reduced horsepower. By the mid-1970s, Corvette horsepower was much lower than in 1969. However, the Corvette still offered unique sports car styling, fiberglass body, strong handling. It remained an American icon. Chevrolet made small improvements each year to keep it competitive. Even with lower power, the Corvette kept its loyal fans. While passenger cars faced many challenges, trucks became more important. Chevrolet pickup trucks were strong, reliable, useful for work. In many rural areas, trucks were essential. During the late 1970s, personal use of trucks also increased. Some people bought trucks not only for work, but for everyday driving. This trend would grow even more in the 1980s and 1990s. The 1970s were also difficult for American factories. There were labor disputes, strikes rising, production costs. Higher wages and inflation increased the cost of building cars. At the same time, competition from foreign companies increased pressure. Chevrolet had to find ways to build cars more efficiently. Automation and improved factory systems slowly became more common. In the late 1970s, early forms of electronic systems started appearing in cars. These included electronic ignition systems, early computer controls for engines. These systems helped improve fuel efficiency, emission control, reliability. Although technology was still simple compared to today, this was the beginning of computer-controlled vehicles. Chevrolet engineers began preparing for a more technology-based future. In the 1960s, big engines were exciting. In the 1970s, people became more practical. Customers now cared more about gas mileage, reliability, low maintenance costs. The idea of owning the biggest engine was no longer the most important goal. Chevrolet had to understand this change in customer thinking. By 1979, Chevrolet had learned many lessons. Fuel efficiency is critical. Quality control must improve. Smaller cars are important. Trucks can provide stability. Technology will shape the future. The company was no longer focused mainly on horsepower. Instead, it focused on engineering balance compliance with laws. Cost control, long-term survival. The 1970s were not a glamorous decade for Chevrolet, but they were very important. This decade forced the company to grow stronger and smarter. Without surviving the 1970s, Chevrolet would not have been ready for the 1980s.